welcome to another episode of Motivation and That. I'm Natalie, I'm your host, and today is a bonus episode. It's going to be a quick one because I just want to make sure that I am empowering folks out there to be as well educated as you can as some of the topics that are coming up come forward. And especially when it comes to where I spent the last 7 years of my career in the VA. So as of September 30th, I am no longer a federal employee. I'm not on the rolls at all. I have fully rolled off and I'm starting new ventures into new spaces. There are a lot of folks like me too. About 30,000 people over the course of the last year or so have taken resignation, retirement, and have left the ranks of Veterans Affairs, whether it's in one of their 3 different departments, which is the easy way to kind of categorize them, or in their major corporate offices. It's a huge shift, especially after a massive hiring initiative over the last few years, and there's a lot of talk from all directions on what is and isn't the right move for agencies in the federal government, especially the VA, which is the second largest, only to the Department of Defense. And there are some publicly available resources out there for folks that I want to make sure you know that you can find and you can look at, because it is complex. It is not as simple as someone who leaves active duty in the military and immediately just starts receiving their benefits. They start receiving disability payments. They can get care anywhere that they might like. It's a little more, I don't know, tangled than that. And it's hard to explain. And it's no way for me to do it in any type of podcast episode over time. It would have to be its own series. So I'm going to make sure that when I publish this post out there, which will be a midweek push before the first episode where I really talk with someone on the pod about our experiences at the federal government, specifically at the VA, that you have and you know where you can go look and find more information, because we don't break down every acronym. We don't get into every specific component of it. And it is very, very different than healthcare in what we call the private sector. So 2 of the major resources that I just want to make sure that I point folks to is something called the VA Functional Organizational Manual. Internally, we called it the FOM. It is a huge document, and it is usually not up to date because of the ever-changing landscape of how the organization is structured and set up. But what it can show you is just how many components actually make up Veterans Affairs. It includes Veterans Health Administration, includes Veterans Benefits Administration, and the National Cemetery Administration. So there's really 3 major arms. But then in addition to that, there's things like the Office of Management. You've got Workforce Development, so your kind of HR office, which has its own acronym. You've got OIT, so the technology side, that's separate. And even in this case, over the last few years, you've had a whole office or group stood up to look at implementing a new health record that aren't actually embedded within the different administrations. So we tend to think of the VA as this huge healthcare arm, 170 hospitals, all of these outpatient clinics, and yet there's also a massive benefits arm. So how do we even get you into the VA? How do we make sure that a veteran can be enrolled for the care that they need and they receive their disability payments and they receive what we call a service connection rating? And if you've read the Washington Post articles lately, you've probably seen a little bit about that. Now, if you want to take that at what it's worth, you can. There are definitely instances where there are programs that can be taken advantage of across the board, but that's in every organization. When I was hired at the VA, I was once told that if it happens in the VA, it'll be front page. If that same thing happened at a local hospital, it might be page 10. And in reality, it's partly because of who we serve, veterans, that are just so incredibly important in the life of our country and in what we do, and they have given themselves, and now we are trying to give back, but also because of the direct connection to taxpayer dollars. But keep in mind, a lot of hospitals are nonprofit. Therefore, there's also a tax connection to those facilities too. So again, anything that you take or you hear or you see in the news or you see through social media, I implore you to take it with a grain of salt and to find the source of the information that you can, which is generally the actual formally published info. So again, VA Functional Organizational Manual, it's going to tell you all of the different setup of things. And you may look at it, scan through, be like, oh my God, 800 pages. But I just scan it. Just scan it and see how complex that organization is. And I say that because it's not as easy as snapping your fingers to quote unquote fix something that is kind of broken. So you have to start to peel back the layers of the onion and really understand where are your risk areas, what is something that's just been legacy and in place. And that's not what we've seen lately. We see very much a let's tear these pages out. And so again, when you're hearing from people that have left the agencies or shifted out of federal government, they're trying to explain that it's not as simple as it may sound or has been communicated over time. So check the VA Functional Organizational Manual. Then you can also find all of the annual reports for the administrations, for VA itself. Specifically, I, of course, was most familiar with the healthcare side of things. So there was the VHA, Veterans Health Administration annual report. There's a financial annual report. There's a benefits report. And all of those, of course, they're slightly delayed, right? Because they come out and they're looking at a year and a half back of information usually. Will tell you all about what the org was striving for over time and what they actually saw results in. Now, again, if you are setting up very specific focus areas, you tend to see results in those areas. And with an organization the size of VA, we can't talk about every little thing. But there are definitely some pieces out there that I don't think people understand. They were started years and years and years ago. And we may just now be seeing the benefits of what some of those initiatives have been. And that takes me to the last one, which is learn how to read legislation. It is so often that we take something at face value. We look at the cliff notes of things like the Big Beautiful Bill or other huge legislative documents. And in reality, a lot of legislation is actually kind of small. So when they're not the mega bus bills or they're not these huge conglomerates of things pulled together, there's a lot of things that are just 3 or 4 pages. No kidding. And trying to interpret something that's just saying, get this done, and here's what it looks like. And meanwhile, we haven't undone everything else that put us in a place where we needed to have this new bill actually happen. So understanding what all of those HBs, the House bill, the Senate bill, SB, that are coming out and how things progress through the government is also really important. And not just for an agency like the VA, but for anything. So Health and Human Services, all of those other groups that have connections to the different industries, FDA, all of those components. I'm sure we probably see it a lot more than we used to because of social media, because of the individuals that are in those positions now. But take a chance and listen to an entire congressional hearing. And I challenge you on whether you think the witnesses, the Congress, whoever is there actually really knows what we're even talking about. And that's what happens when you take an entire country and you try to boil it down to sit in 2 rooms, the Senate and the House. But it is ultimately who are the board of directors for a lot of these agencies are those individuals that are sitting in those chairs asking these questions, maybe not present for every single one of the hearings, and yet they're making the decisions. And one of the things that's the hardest to really make it through is that when new laws ultimately end up in place, they often don't renege on old laws that were there, and they're putting new requirements in, and you have anywhere from 60, 90 to 4 years in some instances to put some of these rules and regs into place, into practice. They require hiring, they require moving people around, they require new systems. I remember looking at draft legislation once because the agencies have a chance to provide feedback often, and one of them was, oh, we're just going to set up this new office, it's going to be this thing, and they're going to do these processes. And I was like, oh, they don't know that all of that already exists because they haven't known the right questions to ask and they don't know the right data to look for. And another thing about all these agencies that are there, really data heavy and information poor, like data rich, information poor across the board. All of this information can get spun to tell whatever you want it to tell. When in reality, if we knew how to ask the right questions, maybe we could get to the ultimate answer that we're looking for to help us make the decisions that we need to go forward. And finally, just remember that the government works a little bit differently. And oftentimes, as much as we like to say, oh, you're protected if you're in what's called the general pay schedule to only work 40 hours a week, or you're in a union or any of those things, a lot of people didn't just work 40 hours a week. A lot of people put in extra time, sweat, tears because they believed in the mission that they served. And in any organization, any of them, think of anything you've been to, anything you've heard about, there are always going to be individuals who take advantage or who sit on their laurels or retire in place. But why does that then taint the reputation of everyone else that's out there? So if you know someone that works in the federal government, get to know them a little bit better. Ask them about themselves. Ask them what they do, how proud they are of what they do, what is causing them strain and stress, and just why that's there, because I guarantee you there's probably something at the heart of the mission of what they do that they are connected to. For me, the decision to leave the VA was the feeling that I was letting down every veteran enrolled in the program, that I could make it better if I stayed. But in reality, I was burnout. I didn't feel like I was being listened to by some of the most important people, those outside necessarily my sphere of influence that could care less in many instances. And I had to do what was best for me. And that meant finding new pathways and being an advocate for change that made sense and wasn't just change for the sake of change, because there is nothing more detrimental than just doing something because you can and not understanding why. So I ask everyone that continues to listen, if there is a topic that you are interested in that we cover on this podcast, this one I felt was extra touchy, extra important. It's why I'm going to give resources to look for research on it. Don't just jump to the first newscast system that you can think of or social media platform, but actually look into research. Go to the .gov sites, the .org sites, the places that have dedicated their lives to some of this, but also know no matter where you go, there will always be some type of bias that's in place. And it's up to you to make your own decisions about what you are going to believe and what you are going to invest your time and energy into. I think that if you're here and you're listening to the pod and you're giving some of these episodes a chance to hear out how we think of things and how we take hot mess and try to turn it into high potential, that you're in the right place and you're the right type of person that is going to take these extra steps occasionally. And it might blow your mind what you find out. So thank you for hanging in here for a quick 12, 13 minutes to listen to a little bit, the very first drop in the ocean about just all of the complexities of things that are standing behind the conversations that we're having. And this will drop the week that I'm going to bring an episode forward about the people behind kind of the noise in the room. And that's the heart of the workforce. That was the heart of people that had to figure out how to put legislation into place that never really got a voice in that legislation, but we believed in it and we believed that we could make it what it needed to be for the people that it served. And just understand how slow things really move, and that if you hear of a law going through, odds are it's been in work for years and it's being battled, and there's been lawyers involved and lobbyists who get paid a lot more money than you to go push certain things through. But what's important is that you educate yourself and you learn a little bit about the process, and you can influence the process next time around. So never think that your voice doesn't have power, because it does. And never believe that you aren't worth anything because someone that has more stake in the game or is more visible makes you feel that way, because it's not the case. So I've been rambling. I'm going to stop. Hopefully this gets you a little bit amped up to hear like, oh, Natalie's really passionate about some of this, because you're going to want to be here for the conversations that happen. They're going to talk about how we need to change as leaders, as participants, as employees, as friends, as humans in this world, in order to actually get to a point where we're just not walking through the muck. And instead, we're trying to turn the muck into something beautiful and purposeful and rewarding that serves all of us in the end. So thanks for listening. Thanks for getting through things. And we'll catch you real soon on another episode of Motivation in That.